Hello, out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear, listening into another Why You Know Game video. And this, I'm going to be talking about one of the most popular franchises that Capcom has ever put out in their entire history, and that is Street Fighter. And while I have played all of the main Street Fighter games, I believe, I think I played the first Street Fighter as part of the Capcom Classics collection. I didn't really play much of it, but I've played it. Having played literally every main game in the series, I don't really think Street Fighter has too many side games. To be honest, it's just like reiterations of their main stuff. I decided that I wanted to just go ahead and look over the series a little bit and just kind of analyze where they are currently with it and how I think they can improve it. Because Street Fighter V is, if I felt like, okay, I felt like Street Fighter 4 was a step backwards from Street Fighter 3, and Street Fighter 5 was like falling on your behind after tripping up over a rock, being drunk, walking around and stumbling all over yourself. That's how I describe Street Fighter 5 after playing every other Street Fighter game in the series. The gameplay itself works perfectly fine. But it's like they changed a lot of things that weren't necessary to change, and then gave us story bits that really didn't amount to much of anything. So the game itself, it feels so haphazard, like it was just thrown out there without a whole lot of thought put into it. And then they ended up going against their word and doing a bunch of stuff that they said they wouldn't do. And I'm like, wow, you guys just really, honestly, seemed like you didn't care with this game. And like maybe they didn't because Sony was the one bankrolling it. But it just seems like they really, truly did not care about what they did with this game. And I'm like, you just, ooh, that pooch, that poor pooch. But honestly, there's a way to fix it. There really, truly is. For one, they need to move past Street Fighter 3. They need to move forward in the timeline instead of staying in that little gray area between Street Fighter 2 and 3. Much like I feel like with Dragon Ball Super, or Dragon Ball as a series, they need to move it past Z, because obviously they're kind of like retconning GT out of continuity existence for the anime. So they might as well just move forward past the point where Oob showed up. But here's the thing with Street Fighter. But like with Street Fighter 6 or whatever, if they create it, I mean, like you've already made a negative stigma with many members of the fan base with what you've done to Street Fighter 5. So get back to your roots slowly. Like just ease yourselves back into it. Don't just try to throw out a game because you're trying to appease the masses. Take your time and really, truly develop this as a Street Fighter game and not just as a competitive game. And I think that was one of the bigger issues. That was one of the reasons that they had so many problems. Like, and granted, you probably could consider me a casual fighting fan, even though I've been in the fighting games since I was little, and I know a lot about different techniques in them and how to utilize them. You could consider me that because I'm not so hardcore about fighting games to the point where I want to be competitive. I'm more worried about the games just being good and being able to have a good time with them, being able to enjoy playing them with or against other people. So what Capcom really truly needs to do for this franchise to be able to revive it, to bring it back. Firstly, again, take their time and move slowly into this next game. Do not rush it out like they did with Street Fighter V. Make sure that you make a prominent arcade mode that can be enjoyed by anyone. And granted, I like the idea of having the individual stories. Like, that is not a problem. The problem isn't the idea. The problem was the execution. Put your story mode in the game and give everyone individual stories. But instead of giving stories that don't necessarily fit together, make sure that everyone's story fits in line in a sequence and part together and to complete a bigger story. And I know somebody's going to be confused as to why I'm saying that. This is something that actually SNK Playmore did with King of Fighters 13, I believe, where they had an arcade mode and then they had a separate story mode. Like, but all of the characters, all of the teams had a part to play. Like, it might not seem like it, but like even like the more minor stuff, but every team had a part to play as far as the actual overall story of the game, where each team played a part in the tournament, like in some way, shape, or form. Like, not everybody had an important part, but everyone had a part, and all those parts came together into one big overall story, which was actually pretty awesome once you played through it and played with all the teams and all the different variations of situations that you can get into in the story mode. And here, for the story mode, everyone has to have the same number of fights. I don't care how many you make that. It doesn't have to be as many as the arcade mode. And I would suggest making the arcade mode more akin to either Street Fighter 3 Third Strike or Street Fighter Alpha 3, where I think you had like 10 fights you would go through in either one of those arcade modes. In Street Fighter 3, you got to choose what you had 2 choices of opponent. Street Fighter Alpha 3, you just had your list of like 10 people that you could take on. I would say maybe do a combination of the two where you could have the choice of opponent in the arcade mode, and then after that, like you also have your mid boss and whatever, like, and I mean story related mid boss for the character, and then on top of that have another character, somebody like Q or G for Street Fighter 5, I believe, show up as somebody like just an unknown challenger that you face, and then maybe have, like, as much as this might be overplayed, Oni or Shinakuma be like a special boss that you get to fight if you make a full run through the game without losing. Like, stuff like that, that's at the heart of Street Fighter. Like, people enjoy that stuff. Like, for the story mode, I would suggest no more than 6 fights. No more than 6. And all of them story related. And you don't have to have everybody's story pick up at the very same moment. But if you're playing with Ryu, and he fights Laura as his third opponent, Ryu could be Laura's 5th opponent. And you can have the same story beats go back and forth between the two of them. Maybe have slight dialogue variations, but have it basically say the same thing, because you're looking at this from each individual character's perspective. So they're not always going to be exactly the same, but should be similar enough where you get the same message out of both versions of what they're saying. And I don't think that's hard to do. Quite obviously, I'm pretty sure SNK could give you guys a hand on that. Another thing I would really love to see happen more in Street Fighter is pre-battle character dialogues, like where each character talks to each other before they fight. Like, that's something that is like really lacking. And again, this is another thing that was done in King of Fighters 13. I don't know so much about 14 because, when I was trying to get it to run on my PC, when they had it free for the weekend, it wouldn't run it. And I didn't have the chance to figure it out because I didn't have enough time to sit down and like adjust all my settings and figure it out. But I know I can run it. That's not the problem. I just got to figure out the settings and that issue. But, it's like, it was just one of those things. Like, there's a lot that they could do with the series to build it up, and on top of that, like, you other characters from the Street Fighter series that have had no growth whatsoever in a long period of time. Like, and if you're going to bring back older characters or add characters in from other characters, stories, and endings, bring the other characters back and let's show some progress for them. And I'm not talking about just progress with their move sets, because when you look at Street Fighter V and then you go to Street Fighter 3 afterwards, it looks like Ken went backwards from Street Fighter 5 and how his moves were. His moves were done because he at one point just stopped wearing his gi properly, for one, and then on top of that, he did his Tatsumaki a lot different in Street Fighter V, especially for his fierce kick, versus Street Fighter 3, which he still, majority of his attacks felt more like Street Fighter 2, but like better. And that's not a bad thing for Street Fighter 3, but when you consider Street Fighter 5 and how everything plays out in Street Fighter 5, it just looks funny. Because it looks like the character decided that he wanted to go backwards in time instead of making progress, even though I would still say, as far as how the character plays, Street Fighter 3, he still feels better. like I'm not gonna lie, because Street Fighter 5, all the characters to me at least feel really stiff and blocky, which is a weird thing to say. It's like they feel very stiff. They don't feel as fluid as they did in earlier iterations. Like Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Street Fighter 3 are probably still the best two Street Fighter games as far as fluidity is concerned. For me, my opinion. I know there are a lot of people that agree with that opinion, but still, that's my opinion. This one's going to talk. This is going to be a decent length discussion here. Again, let's not like try to rush in mechanics because of the competitive scene, because the game gained a competitive scene based on how it was made before. So why try to tweak the game to fit a scene that was already there? You don't have to do that. You don't have to tweak how the game plays to fit the mechanics of people who are going to exploit weaknesses in the system anyway. They're going to do it. Just let them do that, but make the game as stable and as functional as possible. That's what you really need to do. Focus on that. Like, yeah, there are going to be people who will sit down with guile and medium punch you in the nuts until the end of time because that, for some reason, strings together a combo. That I really wish that got fixed, because stuff like that irritates me, where you can do one thing repeatedly and no. A couple times is fine, but if you go beyond like 3 or 4, it needs to stop. And people do that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's irritating to me. Like, that's a side note. But really, truthfully, honestly, if it wasn't if it wasn't rushed out to try to make this whole competitive leap, and you actually took time to put the heart and soul of the Street Fighter series into Street Fighter V, because it really doesn't feel like it's a Street Fighter game. It's a Street Fighter game in name and characters only. It's not a Street Fighter game in how it felt to play it. And I think that's probably the biggest issue I have with it. It doesn't feel like a Street Fighter game when you play it. It just feels like the characters are there. They're available to be played with, but it's not an actual Street Fighter game. And Capcom has been doing that a lot recently with their series, where their games, yeah, they're there, but they don't feel like themselves. The essence of what made it what it was is like lost for some reason. And I mean, that could just be because of the changing of the times with the company and the fact that they don't have the same staff members that they used to have. But you can't tell me that there isn't somebody that's there that remembers playing these games, whether they were developers back then or they were younger and wanted to get into game development. There's no way you can tell me there aren't people who remember how these games felt to play, how impactful they were. Because I'm pretty sure there are a ton of people who do. And another thing is, do not follow the route that you just took with putting advertisements in Street Fighter V. Please don't do that. Don't. Don't do it again. Not at all. Another thing, don't lie. Don't go ahead and lie to people, your fan base, and say, "Oh, we're not making different editions of this game," and then proceed to make different editions of that game because people will. It puts people off. It really, truly does. It makes them feel like you don't. You don't. Okay, it makes them feel like you don't actually give a crap that they are fans of the series. And to be honest, it seems like you don't. like, like just again, from my own personal perspective here, it just seems like you don't. Seems like you guys don't care. So if you don't care, the fan base isn't going to care. This is the same issue I see with you guys having with Marvel versus Capcom Infinite. Didn't seem like you really cared much because you didn't put as much effort into it as you had previous titles. And that, like, and I mean, from my standpoint, it looks like you haven't. So, I mean, I could be incorrect in saying that, but it looks like you haven't. It looks like you haven't put as much care into it as you did in previous titles for that series. And a lot of people feel that way. I know that's not just me. There are a lot of people that feel that way. And that's why Street Fighter V is tanking the way it is. And a Street Fighter 6 would have to be drastically gone over and combed through and play tested thoroughly, as well as the options for play being tested and gone through thoroughly. Like bonus stages, keep bonus stages. Actually, probably add in a few different ones. And that way, when you're playing the game, like in arcade mode, you don't get expected bonus. Well, you don't get the same two expected bonus stages. Like have like 6 different bonus stages, and yes, you only get 2 of them while you're playing the arcade mode at any given time, but they're randomized between like they're randomized. Like you know at what point you'll get the bonus stages. Like, but the way that they play out, or the one that you play, is randomized instead of it being okay. Well, I'll get this here and then I'll get that there. Just it makes it, I guess, from my standpoint, it makes it easier to kind of surprise people a little bit, and it also keeps you a little bit more invested because you don't know what's coming up. Personal opinion, but I think it will work. I'd also say, and I really wish that this happened again after Street Fighter Alpha 3. Put a new world tour mode in the game. Just do it. Like, no one is going to be angry at you for doing that. No one. And it can be completely unrelated to story. Hell, even if you want to take it a step further, make the world tour mode a create a character mode, where you build it, you make your own character, and you can use the world tour mode to build up their strengths and stuff the way that you want to, so you can tailor the character to how you want them to be, and then be smart with it. After someone completes the world tour mode, have the created character have an unlocked story. I don't care what the story ends up being, but do that. Make it something where the created character has an important role, which would also be awesome. Again, a lot of your fans I know would appreciate that, because then that would give you purpose to all of the work that that they put into playing the world tour mode to build up and create this character. I mean, it's a similar concept to what you guys did with Project Justice, where you had the board game in Japan at least, that you can use to give your characters moves or build up their strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. But again, it's playing back to what you guys used to do and putting the heart and soul back into the game the way it was. And again, no one's going to argue against that. No one would. And then allow these created characters to be played online, because all of the assets are going to be in the game anyway, and everyone's going to have the same assets. It would be a smart move. A very smart move. And again, it will give people more reason to enjoy the game. There are definitely going to be players who stick to playing with the traditional characters that are in the game. I would be one of them, especially if you have characters that people underestimate a lot, like Sean and Dan. I would play with them quite often, but I'd also like to have in the option to have a created character, or to be able to play with more characters that are like Guy or Fei Long or Veku, or like people like characters like that, or again another updated version of Karin. That's a Karin. Like I probably pronounced it right either way, but like either way, like that to me, I like. Hell, if you want to do something that would be a twist to everybody, that would be a really strange twist to everybody. Actually, make Dark Sakura canon to the story. Like not like canon to the point where Sakura actually loses her mind and fully succumbs to the Satsui no Hado, but to the point where she has the same struggles as Ryu. Like, and him being past it at this point, he's the one that helps her get through it. Like, those are things that are literally in your lore that you can use, that would fucking improve your game, that would make the experience better, that you guys are not utilizing. There's so many things that I could pull from your history just with Street Fighter alone. With Street Fighter and your crossover fighting games alone, that would improve everything that you guys are doing drastically, that you don't do anymore, that would make for better games. And I'm sorry, at some point you guys have to get Sean to stop being the joke character. Like, that's a personal problem to me because I like that character a lot. And his skill set as a character, when you play with him, actually is pretty damn good. But you treat the character like a joke and make him literally in the story, in the continuity, worse than Dan, when he shows potential to be much better. So I would love it if he actually, got a story where he got some actual wins. Like, maybe not against the most major of characters because you want to build him up. But he needs some wins. Like, dude can't be the loser all the time. Like, show him make some progress. At least. Hell, even if it's just to try to build him up to take on his sister, to try to beat her. Because we all know that his sister is I guess you would say, the master fighter currently between the family. Like, man, maybe make his story run where he has to take on his sister. Doesn't necessarily mean he actually has to win the fight, but he has to get close to winning the fight. Let him make progress. And let him run into Sakura and Karin, or like Alex, other characters that are younger or newer like he is. Make him run into them. Again, like, that's just me personal. Like, that's just another side note. Like, another thing I think would also improve the story and the overall arc of the game and that particular character. Hell, even have him run into Dan. Actually, I would say make Dan his first story opponent. like have him and Dan actually fight and have him beat Dan, so he can move forward from there. Like, gosh, like it's just like a waste of character potential. Like I hate when they do that. But gosh, I could go on for ages about improvements that you guys can make for stuff that you already have that's in the series. And please, if there's anything, kill Goken. Have Akuma actually kill him. Not defeat him, actually kill him. Like he was intended to be. And I know that probably sounds so morbid to some people, but let Goken actually be dead. Or if you're not going to let him be dead, please move him far. If you're not going to kill him, have his presence be very, very minimum. I don't even think he was in Street Fighter 5 now I'm thinking about it. Maybe that's a complaint I don't even have to make, but I'm just saying, it's just weird that he survived for a certain number of years in a coma with no nourishment, no nutrient, nothing. He's like, I'm sorry, suspension of disbelief falls short there. I would say even bring Bison back, like, but bring him back in like a very weakened state. And please don't do what you did with Charlie, because that was irritating. But like, I'm sorry, my boy Charlie doesn't even feel like Charlie anymore. He feels like a watered down version of Rugal in Street Fighter, and it's irritating because the character was so much better than what you guys made him in Street Fighter Five, and I was like, no, I was like, don't do that to my boy again. But like, I think he actually is dead now. Let him stay dead. Do not bring him back. Let him stay dead. Bison, you can bring back multiple times because Bison isn't just a person, he's more of an entity. So you can bring him back in a lot of ways, but you can bring him back to the point where he's in a weakened state. Like where he's not fully charged up on his psycho power. More in line with what he was like in Street Fighter 2, but maybe less so, to the point where he can't manifest his psycho power as much as he was before. Like he's on his last legs, trying to find a way to save himself by stealing another body. And that could literally play into the whole Dark Sakura thing I was talking about, where he realized that she had that potential and he tried to draw it out of her and caused her to snap. Oh, and also, no Kage. No, like that's just evil Ryu. No Kage. Like, please, no Kage. You don't need Kage at all. Like if it's no point in calling it Kage if it's supposed to be evil Ryu. Just let it be. Seriously, just let it. Like if you don't want him to be evil Ryu, we don't need a physical manifestation of his power from Satsui no Hado deciding to become a thing. Like, because it literally made no sense. Still don't do that again. You just don't. Because at that point, you might as well separate Oni or Shinakuma from Akuma. Like you might as well. Like it's no point in having them be the same character then. Like seriously, it really isn't. Like I personally just if I don't know. Like there's just so much stuff, like so many issues with that game, and I'm like, yeah, like there's so much that y'all really need to work on. Like, and like I could make a series on this alone. I'm not going to, but I could. Like, and I could break down every individual point. Like if I have this much to talk about for this. And I don't think I've had very many Why You Know Game videos that are this long. Because this game needs that many improvements. Oh gosh. But I like this again, like just for me, like I think I have another video I'm going to do on this. That'll be at a later date. I'm done for now. Thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears up for more stuff from me. And until the next time, please enjoy your games. Peace out. Yeah.